Hello everybody, it's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to be joined by award-winning film composer, songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Justin Melland. Today we will discuss in detail his work on a very successful Netflix release, Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy Tapes. Welcome Justin.
Hi, thank you.
It's great to have you. I'm glad you could join me today. Justin, at first, I would like to know a little bit more about your background and how you started out in this business.
Oh, great. Yes, I started out in the business. The way that I transitioned into it was in when I was getting a graduate degree at the University of California at Berkeley. I was actually there and was in the process of transferring down to UCLA because UCLA was a little more film friendly. But before I had left, there was an email that came from the Graduate School of Journalism asking if anyone wanted to work with the master's students on their final projects. And no, I guess no one else wanted to, so I did three. And one of them won the Sundance Film Festival that year for Best Short Film. And that really helped to get things started for me. Then the next year, while I was down in LA, I got a phone call from the next class at the same school. And I scored this gentleman's project, and then we got nominated for an Oscar for that one. And that guy's name is Dan Krauss, and we've worked together for maybe 12 years since that day happened, and actually got nominated again for another Netflix documentary that he did called Extremis. And so essentially that moment really launched my career into documentaries, and so and everything got quite good from that point on. And then I also pursued, the other angles of film music, like writing for proper features and narrative projects and that kind of thing as well.
Justin, you seem to be very adept at creating sounds and also electronic sounds. How much time actually and effort goes into finding one particular sound and even one piece of music?
Yeah. So the thing with that, it's one reason why I love doing electronic scores so much, is because if you do them right with the right state of mind, then you don't need a lot of different parts. You sometimes only need one or two or maybe three really cool parts that evolve. And so the music is actually about the evolution of of a say like a sound or a small phrase, as opposed to like a giant orchestration. And electronic music fills out the spectrum in a way. Just a single note from a really cool piece of electronics can really fill out the whole spectrum. And so anyway, because of that, I have a little more time to find a particular sound, because I might only need three in this particular cue, and maybe only one of them is the really main thing. So I could dive into finding a sound for 30 to 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, just getting everything right. And then the process of laying it out into the cue might only take another hour or two, because that's just more organizing underneath of a film. So I don't think it takes that much longer than if I just had everything up as a digital palette and everything was ready to go all the time.
Do you usually hear certain sounds in your head right away, or do you at times spend many hours going through your library in order to find a certain sound?
Well, the way that I have my studio laid out now is with lots and lots of pieces of analog equipment all over the studio, whether it's modular synthesizers or strange little boxes that Folk Tech makes, or synthesizers like Music Easel and Oberheim stuff, and rolling stuff, and all this stuff is all around the studio, and it's all ready to go all the time. And so what I do is I'll watch the film, and I'll get an idea like, oh, I need a really aggressive bass line here that's very like on the edge of being even normal. Like you might not even know what that sound even is, right? And so then I'll have certain places where I go for that, and then it becomes about experimenting with a certain set of tools for a little while until something really cool happens. So that it's more like that. Like I'll get an impulse to go work on a certain instrument, and then I'll work with it until it starts to do something cool.
Great. If I'm not mistaken, your studio is called the 11th Laboratory.
Yes, that's right.
How did you come up with that name?
Because I've had 11 studios.
Really?
Yeah, ever since I started with my very first music studio in my apartment. I've had to move 11 times, or move it 11 times. Yeah, and so each time. I think around the 9th time, I started to name it that. So for a while, I had the 9th Laboratory.
Sounds crazy.
It's a little, yeah, because sometimes you have to move in the middle of a project. And, oh my gosh, it's crazy. It was just a lot of things happened when I was, in that first decade of doing things. And there was movements and family things and all kinds of stuff that just made me have to change locations. But now I'm actually in a pretty stable place. Like we have our own house in a nice neighborhood in LA, and I really love my studio. So I'm not looking to change anytime soon.
Have you always been in Los Angeles? I mean, did you move within Los Angeles 11 times?
No, I moved. Well, I started up in Seattle, where I was doing my training in school. Then, moved down for graduate school to California, but that was in Berkeley. Then moved down to LA and moved a few times here. And then actually, for personal reasons, had to move out of LA for about 2 years. And so, that was a bit of jumping around. And then came back. And then to get settled in LA, that took a little bit of moving around. Because, when we first got to town, we were renting in a place and then needed to actually then go to another place while we were shopping for a house. And then finally we got the house and then we had to move again. So it's just like, oh my God, wow, that's getting around.
Sounds pretty demanding also.
Yeah, it was.
Justin, when you're working on a project, no matter what the project is, do you like to see some footage up front to get inspired, or do you think you're able to come up with something on the fly?
I really, really love to see something. I'm the reason that I like to do this work is because I respond very quickly and also very musically to images. And so it's this really great place. I mean, I'm so glad that, a film composer is a job, because it's really something that my brain responds to very well. So I feel like it's very important, an important part of my process to actually get to see something. It doesn't have to be final, but I have to see the images and see the way the characters are moving, hear some voices, and then I can feel it. Once I can feel it coming off the screen, then I can make something to match it.
Justin, Let's dive right into Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy Tapes, which was directed by Joe Berlinger. And just before this interview, I rewatched all 4 parts of this great Netflix documentary. And how did you get involved in this production?
I got involved because I had been brought in to score the last series that Joe had done for Starz called Wrong Man. And that was a 6-part series that were actually going to start doing the second season of very soon. So that was my first experience with Radical Media and Joe Berlinger. And I think I did a good job, and they liked the music very much. And so when it came time to pick their composer for the Bundy tapes, I was Joe's recommendation, which was a nice honor, because he's pretty successful and probably doesn't always have to make those decisions, but he wanted to bring me in, and so that was wonderful. And then there was a very cool process where they called and they said, so we're looking for someone to help us think outside the box. And I got obviously excited about that because that's what I like to do. And so I took this as an example to give them a score that I really have always wanted to do, which is one that's heavy in electronics, very forward-thinking in the way that score is used, and also minimal, but yet really well produced. So it doesn't sound sparse. It's just minimal, the minimal amount of tools to make a big, exciting sound. And so I wrote a demo for them that illustrated an approach there, and then they chose me based on that demo.
Were you actually completely familiar with Ted Bundy and all his crimes, or did you learn more about him when you worked on this, let's say, true crime series?
Yeah, I knew about him because I grew up in Bellingham, Washington, which is very close to where a lot of the crimes were committed. And so when I was a little boy, I would hear the name Ted Bundy, and it was like hearing about a real-life monster. And so it was in the news a lot. But I didn't know that much. I just knew that he was a violent criminal and that women were going missing. And so I was hearing that those news stories when they happened. And then you just he's just in your memory. I didn't think about him very much over the years, but anytime anyone would mention it, I knew who he was. And then when the show came back, I learned all the details, like that he was this like a very capable law student, and and then like this Jekyll and Hyde character where part of him is actually like a really nice guy, and then this other part is like the most evil man ever, and they almost for a while seemed to exist separately in the same person. And so I learned all that from the project.
I mean, you've just mentioned two sides of the character, and I've also come across some criticism online which says that at times the Netflix production didn't portray him strongly enough as the monster and the sociopath which he was, which I think also reflects how many people perceived him back then, including his mother and some of his friends, that simply couldn't imagine that this person was capable of these atrocities. And when you look at the documentary, it becomes very clear that he was such a, let's say, crazy person, and he came across as the guy next door. What do you think, or what is your take on that, on his personality?
Well, I think to really be able to appreciate what a strange time in history this was, we need to be able to actually get a perspective on what a nice guy he was and how likable he was. Partly because we can see then why he was so so good at not getting caught and good at pulling in victims, and etc. Why that was so. So I think that it's important that they show that side of his character, because that was the side that was his true weapon. That got him. It helped him stay alive for many years when he was actually even still in prison. It kept him from getting caught for a very long time. It made him. It was why he was smart enough to escape so many times. And so I feel like if they had just talked about that he was a monster, it essentially would have just been boring and, kind of predictable. And I don't think it would have been as interesting to people. Because it's not that serial killers are interesting. It's that a personality like that sometimes feels like it's worth a look, because you don't run into people like that every day.
I mean, I think he escaped twice, if I'm not mistaken. And he actually,
Yeah.
the first time he escaped, he jumped out of the window of one of the, I think the library of
Yeah.
of the courtroom, and
Yeah.
to come to think of it, I mean, they had prepared a trial of someone in that was going to be convicted of murder in the first degree, and apparently they didn't even take it too seriously. I mean,
Yeah, I think that, and I don't know how things went in other situations back then, but I do think that probably they were so relaxed about him because he really had a way of putting you at ease. And so he probably just made them think, oh, Ted's just going in the library. He just studies up for his cases, and, he's a harmless guy. They probably just really felt like he was just a nice person, and then he knew that. So he was practicing in his cell, like jumping from heights to strengthen his legs, because he knew that he had this chance.
and when you look at the footage of the fourth part of the documentary, when the trial comes about, and he seemed to be pretty relaxed even during the trial, and he was kidding around, joking around.
Yeah, I think that's why his last attorney had said that he was just really not well, because he couldn't. It was like a part of him couldn't grasp how real and how serious the situation was. It always seemed like a game to him. And so I think that could have been part of it. I really think that denial is a huge part of his character. And I think that when he was inhabiting, say, like the Dr. Jekyll side of his personality, I think that the denial was so strong that he could make himself believe that the other person didn't exist.
Yes.
And so in a way he could probably just be like, wow, I finally have my chance to be a lawyer, and almost not even realizing that it's his own case,
Yeah.
or that realization is a kind of cloudy thought that doesn't really seem to apply.
And when you and Joe Berlinger talked about the specifics of the music, did you try to nail down a certain idea, a certain sound, or did you try to focus on the story first and foremost?
I think that focusing on the story is a given, and so what we wanted to do was define the personality of the score, and I think that was one of the things about the out of the box comment, which is that they wanted a score that could function in a very, very high level as film music, but that also had a very discernible personality. Because I think it's an opportunity for music to shine while still 100% supporting the show. And so what we did talk about was the personality of the music, and key phrases were let's make it feel 70s, or like the Tools came from the 70s. And which they did. I mean, a lot of the synth that I used are and a lot of my favorite synthesizers are from the 70s. And so that was really exciting direction. And actually, that's what I used on my demo. I used a 1970s super iconic oscillator for my demo. So we were kind of all thinking in the same way, but it was nice to know that they were also on board with kind of going in a 70s type of 70s experimental music kind of way.
Did your demo serve as a template for the whole score?
It actually kind of, yeah, it did. It was a real launch pad, and some of the music from the demo was actually used in the score, and yeah, but we definitely used it as a launching pad. Where it evolved from the demo was just into, I'd say, harder driving synths. It got a little bit scarier, and also then I found a way to kind of take this 70s sounding synthesizers and then put them in a kind of synth wave context where, like, when I'm doing electronic beats, it feels pretty modern, and so and then also with a kind of rock and roll edge as well to it. So there's this synth wave rock and roll 70s monster music kind of thing happening, and that was an evolution that happened, while I was writing.
How much music did you actually write for the Ted Bundy tapes?
I'm sure I wrote about 5 hours of music.
5 hours?
Yeah, because we probably cut at least. I think I probably went through the first episode and revised or rewrote 80% of the score. Once I really found the sound, I just on my own just went back and just combed through it and kind of fixed everything that I wanted that didn't apply to the new sound I found. And so even there's going to be like 40 minutes of music that I just end up tossing out. And and then the show was 4.5 hours long. So and I wrote basically for the whole show.
Will there be a release of the score, physical or digital?
I at this point, Netflix has said no, that they don't want to release the score, and I think maybe our only hope is if we win an Emmy or something, then maybe they would reconsider. So, but yeah, it's kind of, I've had so much demand for it, and then I have a demo of my work on SoundCloud, and that's had like an incredible amount of plays, since I put it up there. So it's too bad that they don't want to do it, but maybe we'll win an award and they'll change their mind.
Hopefully it's gonna.
I would like that.
And Justin, when you approach this project, do you feel a need to kind of, to some extent, intellectualize the music, or is it all about emotion for you?
I think that it's, I don't feel the need to do a lot of intellectualizing of the music. I like to be able to answer questions of why I'm doing something, and I like the answer of why to actually apply to the character. So I think that's important for me to be able to know that I'm not simply going on the emotion of it. But the key important aspects of the actual technical scoring are the making the picture work and being the proper emotion of the scene, and then having the style make a kind of sense in a contextual way. So those are the most important things, which I feel like don't require a large amount of intellectualizing, but then there are moments when I'm say like writing an actual theme for the character, where I do like to get even deeper into these questions of why and why are these decisions actually good in a narrative kind of way.
And the series also features a well-produced main title sequence, which you also scored. Was it specifically written to be the main title?
Yes, I specifically wrote a main title, And that was a great process because they started with music. They just sent me a couple of images that they knew they would use in the sequence, and they wanted me to do a piece of music that started off feeling more innocent and then had the quote unquote dark turn at some point in the piece. And so I wrote that a couple of times, had a call with Joe about how to get it even more into the place where it needed to be. And then I did another revision on it, and at that point, basically, we had it. And then they cut the main title to the music, which is, I think, why the music is very natural, and then also all the images seem to lock perfectly.
Great. And as this Netflix production is, of course, very dialogue-oriented, and it has a very strong narrative, and how difficult was it actually to underscore the series and to create a score which would not only accentuate the images but would work also with the dialogue?
Yeah, it was. I think that my whole career of scoring lots and lots of different documentary series has helped me figure out how to technically do that, how to make stuff that really feels exactly how it should and has the right amount of momentum, but also stays out of the way of the dialogue. So that's been many years of practice that have got me there. And then as far as inspiration and finding the ability to hit the emotions just right, that was actually quite easy on this one because the emotions are so well defined. The character and the feeling of each scene without music was really intense in all of its different shades, all the different shades of emotion. And the film was very receptive to music, so I could be very intense in the score, and the film is just saying, give me more, give me more. It's sometimes a film will push you away, or it'll say there's really no need for music here at all, but this one was more like the opposite. It was like a sponge. So that was really fun.
I think Netflix could have produced 6 or even 8 episodes, and it would never have been boring. It was such an interesting production from start to finish. I think it will resonate with people a lot, and according to the Nielsen rating, it has been so tremendously successful, and I think it will captivate an audience for weeks and months to come.
Well, thank you for saying so. I agree. It's a very rich project. And
Justin, what else is on your mind? Do you have anything else to add on the Ted Bundy documentary?
I just think that it was a real gift for me to be able to use all the tools that I have collected over the years, both in just my skills that I've learned, and also all the cool instruments that I've collected. It's a real part of my musical life is to find interesting instruments and finding great sound is a huge part of how I score. So having a project that really needed me to do that in an intense way was a true gift.
Justin, what's actually next for you? What are you currently working on?
I am working on several series at the moment. And for one, Wrong Man is coming back very soon. And I'll be scoring season 2 of that. And I'm working on 2 different Netflix series that I'm not allowed to talk about. But they're very cool. And I feel very honored to have been hired onto them.
Justin, I would love to thank you for taking so much time out of your schedule to talk to me today. And I really enjoyed talking to you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I did. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you calling, and I've had a nice time chatting.